Okay, we're live.
Brownie in there too.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the workshop of the Board of County Commissioners for October 4th. And our Southwest Council of Government, Miriam, is running late, so we are going to
do
go
the
ahead.
pledge?
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, again, our first presenter is running a little late, so we're going to go ahead. We have Haley Saunders here with Access ATU funding request. So, Haley, if you want to come forward.
Okay, let's see.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And also on Zoom with us, we have Molly Rodriguez.
Okay.
Molly Rodriguez is the clinical manager for the acute treatment unit over in Durango. She also supervises the community policing program. So this afternoon, I'm here to request your support for the acute treatment unit. This would be the third year, I believe, if you choose to fund it. We're asking for $10,000, which would go towards the operational support of the ATU, which is the only inpatient psychiatric facility in the Southwest. I'm sure you all read the letter, but in Montezuma, we've sent 50, last year we sent 53 residents to the ATU for short-term stabilization, which is really important because it allows people to have a place that's close to home for recovery and then get back into the community as quickly as possible. This year, of the 722 crisis assessments we've done for Montezuma County, as of August, 22 of those were placed in the ATU, and as of today, 28 people have been placed in the ATU. So it's a really important resource here locally for all of our residents. The reason that we ask for funding for the ATU is from the beginning in 2006 when it was built, it was about 23% funded by local governments. So we continue to fund it in that way because we don't get all of the funding from the state and patient fees. So the ATU is funded by Medicaid, patient fees, a little bit from the Office of Behavioral Health, and then our community funding from you all, Mancos, and our other partners across the region. And Molly is here to answer any clinical questions that you all might have.
Before we ask any questions, Molly, is there anything that you want to add before we get going?
I think Haley did a good summary of the programming. I think it's important to note that while our ATU is a lower level of care compared to a psychiatric facility, that we are often trying for creative solutions that support the patients who are coming through our local emergency rooms in our counties. And so we attempt to utilize which is the ATU in our area, and sometimes that's not possible, but we do try that first before using our out-of-area placements. The care and services provided in the ATU is pretty extensive. It includes psychiatric stabilization and medication management, therapeutic interventions as appropriate on an individual basis, group counseling sessions, and family sessions. And we also have case management resources that handle all sorts of things, from applications related to resourcing, support related to linkage and referral to outpatient therapies, applications for SNAP or food stamps or whatever the person might need, as well as providing discharge information and summaries to insurance companies and other providers as needed.
Okay.
Just for, I have some questions so we can gather some data.
Sure.
You had 53 residents were evaluated last year, is that right?
Yeah, 53 were admitted to the ATU.
Okay.
Yes.
How many were requested to be evaluated and not completed? You have any idea?
You know, I don't have an idea of that, but Molly can speak to how admissions are evaluated. It's based on appropriateness. Molly, you want to jump in?
Sure. So crisis evaluations begin in a lot of different ways, as you guys are pretty familiar with. Sometimes the evaluations occur in the community at a person's home or at a community location, and other times they're completed at places like emergency rooms, in the jail, as well as in our detox facility. After that initial crisis evaluation, level of care determinations are begun to be made based on the person's current presentation of psychiatric illness or behavioral health crisis. The clinician works beside the individual to decide what level of care is needed. There's a pretty high threshold for involuntary placement, for individuals' rights to be taken away and to then be placed against their will into a facility. But it does happen, and so the clinician is considering that. Are they at risk to self, others, or greatly disabled as a result of their mental illness? And then secondarily, are they wanting and needing a level of care like the ATU or like a psychiatric facility in order to assist in their stabilization, or do they need a higher level of care than what those services can provide? Some of the things that are deterrents from somebody being able to go into the ATU, which is ultimately determined by our psychiatric staff, are high levels of medical needs. And so if the person needs intervention on a medical level that we cannot accommodate, then they would not be eligible for the ATU. If they can't ambulate independently or care for their ADLs in terms of transition, mobility, showering, things like that, but independently, like they would need a level of assistance, they would be ineligible. And if the individual is refusing to take medication, and if they do not take medication, will not have a high likelihood of successfully stabilizing. And so those are individuals who are typically experiencing psychotic disorders, whose psychosis impedes their ability to function on the unit in a way that's safe for themselves and others, and whose care would not be assisted without medication. And so because our unit is one in which we don't do physical or chemical holds or restraints, people who require that level of intervention are not eligible for AT care.
Thank you.
So that's a long way of saying they have to meet the criteria, so we don't necessarily track.
Right.
One reason that I could think of somebody not being admitted who would meet the criteria is if they were symptomatic for COVID. That's the only thing I can think of in the past year and a half. If they met all of the other boxes and were appropriate, that would be the only thing that we'd turn them away.
Of the 53 that were admitted, how many were Montezuma County residents? You have that?
All of them.
All of them? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Last, but are you seeing an increase in mental health crises?
We are.
Okay.
We are seeing an increase. There was a slight uptick in ATU admissions. You know, we've seen changes in the reasons that people are having issues. You know, just the disconnect from regular life and social supports. Kids are having different problems at home. We're just seeing a whole slew of different reasons that people are in crisis. And with that, there has been an uptick in ATU admissions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Haley, I've got a question. Maybe you can answer it, maybe you can't. But of the 53 Montezuma County residents that were admitted to the ATU last year, can you tell us a number of how many had to go on to get higher level care somewhere else?
I can't answer that. Molly, do you have any?
I would not be able to answer that without looking specifically at data.
So generally, about 10% or less would of crisis assessments end up needing a higher level of care, and even a smaller percentage of those end up needing out-of-area hospitalization. So generally, someone wouldn't go from ATU to a higher level of care unless something very complex happens. But that screening that Molly went through and the admission criteria would direct somebody to a higher level of care first, if that was what they needed.
And where is that higher level of care?
It can be anywhere. So Grand Junction, Colorado Springs, Denver, there's quite a few different facilities, so it's based on their capacity, another list of criteria, what's most appropriate for that patient. And they also consider what the family needs as well. You know, can they get there? What sort of needs do they have? So a lot goes into that assessment of where somebody would go if they needed inpatient psychiatric hospitalization.
How are these patients transported?
So it depends. EMS does a lot of the transporting between Southwest Memorial, Durango Fire has taken on a lot of transports. And then if we can be involved, we will transport. We do end up picking a lot of people up and bringing them back into the community and using our care coordinators to do discharge planning and work with that person. So we might not be involved always in them getting to the facility, but we generally are involved with them coming home.
No, I'm good.
I just
Thank
have
you.
one question. What's the average length of stay for people in the ATU, and then is there a max length of stay?
Molly, can you answer that?
Sure. So the average length of stay for ATU was anywhere from 3 to 5 days. Maximum length of stay, yes, when it comes to insurance companies approving days in the ATU, it's very dependent on those individual companies. However, I can speak anecdotally that we make decisions based on discharge and length of stay from the individual's care needs. And so, for example, we've had an individual in the ATU since the end of August, currently, and that is highly unusual. However, it's what that person needs. And so yeah, to answer your question, 3 to 5 days, and we prefer no more than 2 weeks if at all possible, simply because it speaks to that person's stabilization and where they are in their treatment, potentially needing more or being ready for discharge, and there are exceptions.
So part of what the funding allows us to do is take care of those self-pay patients, people on a sliding scale that aren't able to cover the full fee, anyone uninsured. So that way everyone has access and doesn't have to worry about payment as a barrier.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody? Okay.
Thanks for your time. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Molly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Haley.
Thanks,
you,
Molly.
guys. Thank you.
Okay, I do not see the fair board, but I do see Road and Bridge. So, Rob. Rob in Virginia, come on up. Good afternoon.
You guys,
Good, how are you?
good. So today is just a work session, right? We're just discussing what we put together.
Yep.
That's correct.
Tomorrow we discuss the proposal itself, bring it to the board, I guess. Okay. So the first thing we did was we went through our employees and had a conversation with the administrator about some different ways to work with the budget to help the employees. They gave me a list of 3 county average, La Plata, Montrose, and Archuleta County, which is a nice piece of work, a piece of exercise that gave us something to work off of. So if you look at our spreadsheet that's on the screen there with the employees. Get organized here.
information, huh?
Basically, what we did was we were asked to kind of look at going back and picking up some folks that were 25, 30-year people and bringing them up to the forefront. But we're pretty even across the board already with our wages, with what we were doing. So rather than just pick one or two out of the crowd and say, you've been here 20 years, we'll reward you and not touch anybody else, we just said, let's go across the board with a 5% pay increase all the way across for everybody. And then with that, we looked at that and said, well, that puts us in about the medium range of the 3-county average, and not high, not low, about right in the middle, which we were pretty close to the middle anyway. We were right on the border with them anyway, so it all fit pretty good. But then with Shaq and I discussing our ways to promote within, we decided to, at the road department, we decided to create some levels of different things. Like if you look at the bottom down there, you got a lead man, you got truck foremans, you got mechanic levels 1, 2, and 3, some office assistant levels, managers, road supervision. And that gives us an opportunity or a way to work with them in the future with annual evaluations, conversations, whatever it takes to bring them up and make them be more interested in staying and working harder to get more out of it with what they can do. So I think this is the right way for us to go about a salary increase and give us tools to make it better for the employees on the supervisory side of things anyway at this time. So if you look down through there, we're basically just, it tells you what we were making on this year, and it tells you what they'll make next year with 5% pay raise. Move a few people around, and same head count, nobody extra, nobody less, working the same amount of people. Anything else?
So, what kind of criteria, if they move from like level 1, 2, or 3, like say your mechanics, what do they have to meet? Is there a different certification? I mean,
It's not a certification, it's a skill set. It's a skill we're
or
looking for.
skill.
Yeah, we're looking for a level 1 being basic, entry level, mechanical work, nuts and bolts, turning wrenches, to rebuilding diesel engines. From there on up, to level 3. Level 3 would be rather highly skilled, mechanical inclined to rebuild engines and transmissions and those kind of things, where level 1 would be DOT, transportation type work, getting trucks out the door, all DOT, brakes, clutches, different things like that. So it's just a different level. And we actually started this a couple of years ago too, and it's been more than that. It's been 5 or 6 years ago. We started a little apprenticeship program, internal. It wasn't anything publicized, but we started out with some 18-year-old kids that wanted to be mechanics, and some stayed and some didn't, and brought them right on up to level 1, level 2. Then level 3, we're out there looking for the higher skilled ones at level 3. So. Same with foremans, road foremans. They have a lot of responsibility. The road foremans are they take a lot of burden on their shoulders with their jobs. And they have to make decisions. They have to make choices. They have to go out and visit with the public. They have to be workable to all of them, and yet stay within the confines of our what we can do and can't do. And they just got a lot of responsibility. So a couple of different levels for foremen as you work your way into that system, and you are allowed to be evaluated and a pay belt, So that's how I want to do it. I want to try to just do it that way.
okay. Anything to add, Virginia? No?
Just here for support.
She does all the work. So I'm kind of like you. I do all the talking, and she does the work. So we are on a work session.
Rob, what do you do with your electronics guys? I mean, do you do much electronic works on your equipment? With all this new computer stuff.
We internally train them. We buy the computers and we buy the programs that talks to Cat, talks to the Cummins, talks to these John Deere and Cat, both. We all have it. And we furnish all those tools. We furnish all the means, and then they just self-educate themselves in that system. And if we have to bring a representative from Cat or John Deere or Cummins or whatever in to help us, we bring them in. So, yes, sir. That's a good question.
Okay.
But we do have all that, yeah. So, or as much of it as we can use.
There's a lot of that stuff. It's
Yeah.
electronic anymore.
It is. It is. So.
Like, what do you have on a machine nowadays? 5, 6 different ECMs that talk to each other? I mean,
And every one of them costs money to have a computer to read, you know?
Yep.
You know, and it helps. It saves you from doing a lot of exploratory surgery with wrenches and screwdrivers, you know?
Mhm.
Tearing it apart, putting it back together again. It does help, so.
okay.
So there's our plan for the wages and what we're trying to do for those guys and the girls. Again, the county was, that's worksheet you guys put together for a 3-county average was a big help. And I was very happy to say we were about the middle of the road anyway, just a little bit less than middle. You got your low ones in like Archuleta and your high ones like Montrose or La Plata, and we were right in there. So it made me feel better, at least where we're at today, you know. So okay, if you want to go on, I got the budget proposal. This is the one we like the best, the worksheet.
I didn't send that to
You
him.
didn't send it? Okay, well, if you want to follow along with your Percell, you can start with the Percell there.
Disappeared to me.
Oh, back to what, year 20? On our revenues?
I think that's what that shows, what that report shows.
So we're basing on 20 though, right?
Mm-hmm. We based it on the revenues for 2020.
So what we do is we go back to year 2020 to build our budget for 2022 now for revenues. We can't use 2021 revenues because we're not done yet. So we go back to 2020 revenues and cross your fingers that it comes close to the budget. That's about as close as we've ever got. So if you guys don't have it on your screen, but
I'll get it in a second.
we do go down through there. We accumulate all of our annual revenues. That's basically everything from HUFTA to transfers to everything we can get our fingers on. We add it all up and then we start taking it and going down through our budget and splitting it up, prioritizing.
There we are. Or were. You want to start on revenues or expenditures?
Expenditures.
Okay.
I didn't put anything in revenues for this because we used 2020.
Okay.
So I can't see your screen, but you're looking at like 02, 5,000, 1120. Permanent salaries, starting there on page 3 of 8.
Doesn't look like that either, Rob.
Huh? Permanent salaries.
Yeah, it will be 02, 5,000, 1120.
There you go, right there, 1120.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll just read through my notes here on that 1120 permanent salaries. By raising the 5% like we talked about, a few odds and ends there, we took $116,475 out of our pave overlay accounts to pay for this. pay raise. And that should take care of us with what we're proposing with the salaries. And then part-time salaries, we increased that $3,900. That's also taken out of the paved asphalt account. Overtime, we decreased it $10,000 to get to the 2020 budget. So our actual budget was $35,000. Extended leave retirement, we took $10,000 out of that. Fringes and getting on down to that. So asphalt, by doing all these decreases, we're let's see, budget 21. What did we do there?
You took it down 40,000.
Took it down 40,000, yeah, to get to the 2020. And you got to remember, we're getting back to the 2020 because our goal was to spend the money in our savings account or our
Fund
surplus to get it down to plus or minus $3 million. We want to hold right around that $3 million, remember? So like last year was an $8 million budget. This year's going to be 6 something. We're cutting down, bringing it down. And we've got a 36% decrease from Kinder Morgan tax revenues this year too. So we're chipping away at all this. So as you go down through here, you're going to see a lot of these decrease just to get us within our revenues is what we're doing, and not surviving on our additional work with our surplus funds because they're no longer surplus. They're there. Dust control, we bumped that up a little bit because we're having a lot of success with it with our mag, so it went up a little bit. The gravel went down some, 17,000. Fuel, with the price of fuel now, I'm hoping 420,000 this year is enough, you know, but we'll just not do as much fuel running. We'll just find other things to do. Tires, we were looking at our historical spending on tires. We took 10,000 out of that, and I think we'll be okay with that. Repair and maintenance at 107,000, decreased it. Signs decreased 23,000 there. Tree removal, took 10,000 out of that one. Public utilities, we had to increase that 15,000 to help us with our solar installment for the next few years, so we had to bump that up. Miscellaneous safety, took 2,000 out of that. Capital outlay, reduced it 105,000. Special roads project, decreased it 931,000, and that's because we're carrying the bridge and the Camel repair on the books. Even though we haven't spent that money yet, we have to carry it. So there's almost $1 million we'll have to carry this year without spending it, holding that in the bank to get those two projects done. Road G, our paving overlay, we decreased it at 116,000. Utilities, decreased all that, and the alkali project. So basically, at the end of the day, we're down to $6,549,010 is our proposed budget.
That's what's fine.
That includes removing Bonnie's share of the road and bridge funds that we give her. So she went down from 247 last year to 239 with the Kinder Morgan decrease.
What'd you say it was, 6.5?
$6,549,010. That's down from $8,657,857 last year. So that's about as bare bones as we can get at this time.
And that'll put you about 3 million in
Yeah,
reserves?
about 2.8 if it projects out the way we're thinking it will. I mean, it's only August. We're only getting reports from the assessor, the clerk's office at August numbers right now. So we still got a lot of bills to pay the rest of the year. So it could be around 2.8. So.
And of course, some of that's just holding there, like you said, what we do or don't do on the bridge and Road G, that just sits.
Correct.
Well, we will build the bridge.
We will.
Yeah,
The
eventually.
bridge
Working
is a
on the
given, yeah,
bridge.
so there's 300 and some thousand, and we've got to pay, and it's scheduled to go out for bid, so
We gotta fix McGuire.
I'm pretty sure of that one. The one that we don't know about, McCamel, what will that end up costing us? We're holding 500 and some thousand, and hopefully don't go over that, so. But, we got to carry it on the books anyway, so.
Right, which we're gonna end up fixing that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no
way out of it.
There's no way out of it. That road's gonna fall off.
Only thing I can say is we do it for a couple 100,000, not 600,000, or something comes up, we have a slick way of fixing this here pretty soon that works for us. And then that would be some available funds to put back towards the roads. Anything that we do get through the year will go to the road, that special roads fund where we have chip seal projects. And we're leaving some money there to do chip seal. We're just not gonna do any asphalt this year. It'll be very minimal. Maybe the bridge approaches on Alkali Creek, and that'll be about it. So,
Rob, do you know, of course, I know we're still waiting on that DOLA grant, but out on, what is it, towards Y where you ground up that stuff, are you planning on asphalting that next year, or does it depend on how it settles
no,
over
it's in the budget to chip seal Road Y and Road 16.
Okay. Okay.
That's in there. So if we get the DOLA grant, then that gives us a little more breathing room to do other work. And that's why I'm not discussing what roads we do at the moment, because I just don't know yet. You know, I just don't want to go out there and put that out there and then not be able to show up. So we'll see how much money we got, and then we'll pick the roads we got to get fixed and the ones we want to work on. So.
We probably won't know until late December, early January if we receive the DOLA, so.
Yeah. Which is typical. That's how we do that. We might not get any of it. Might be zero this year with the way
It's
things are going.
pretty slim pickings according to DOLA.
We won't do anything on Road S where we were hoping to work on Hay Camp Road going up to the pits and up Hay Camp. We won't be able to do anything there. Gravel it, put some mag on it maybe, but if DOLA don't come through for us on that one, that'll get canceled till the next year, till we can come up with some more funds. So. But everything's based on revenues minus 36% on Kinder Morgan, out of our share of Kinder Morgan, including the weed department. They had to, drop 7,500 or 8,000, I believe it was, somewhere in there to get their 36%. That's where we're at. So.
Okay. Question?
I'm good, thank you.
So tomorrow I just say hello and we're.
About that quick?
Yeah.
Say
I got other
hello,
things I want to talk about tomorrow. That's why.
Flash it.
Yeah, good.
and go over that.
Okay. Is that it?
No, actually, we need to talk about the gravel pit.
Okay.
We actually do have Mancos here in the room too, and we had scheduled, I think, 2 months or every 2 months that we were going to kind of give a briefing or an update where we stood on the proposal of that inspection for the reclamation portion of it and where we stand with that being signed off. And then that way we can give that back or quit claim it back.
Well, I think, it's been slow this month or two. We've been a little bit busy, but we've got Dustin to send us the form. We've got pictures taken to the pit, and we're going to get the form filled out. And I'm not going to say we didn't push it to the back burner a little bit over the last 2 months. We did. We've been pretty busy with what we've been doing. But we are at that time of year now where we can tackle these issues and get going on it. So next couple of weeks, we should be able to have Dustin what he needs and let him have his 60 days to review from their side of the fence and make it happen.
So talking to Dustin, what's his anticipation on an inspection?
He has
Can you give
60
us-
days
He has 60 days.
to review it and look at it and then tell us what he wants to do. So
I know, but
wouldn't tie it
will
down
he
any
use the
closer
whole
to that.
60 days or can we?
Nope, he just said 60 days. So, hopefully sooner. But they're still
Because
working
in
at
60
home.
days, how are you going to do an inspection? I mean, I
Well, that's
hope
why
in
we have to
60
take
days we
pictures.
have snow
Snow.
on the ground.
well,
I hope.
yeah, I know. But
And
that's why we
that's-
took a lot of pictures of it. He asked us to
Diff-
take pictures and we did. So
Difficult to do inspections if there's muck and mud and snow on the ground. So is that going to work as an inspection, the photos, or do we know, or we have any
He'll have to make a
responses?
visit, he has to come on site. So,
we'll get this turned into him next week. He might show up the next day. He just won't commit to anything less than 60 days. I don't think there's any issue with him coming down. He says he has 60 days to get back with us. That's all his answer is. There's no animosity about it. It's just, that's business. So he's ready to come down as soon as we turn it in, I guess, within 60 days. So we'll get it turned in this week.
he's
We
probably
were
got
under
a
the
plan.
assumption that this was turned in 60 days ago.
No, you were told us to get started on it. We did. So we did. We have. We've just, we're like everybody else. It's a bad time of year when we got all this work going on with chip seal, and then we have the 2 pits that had to be redone with the Bureau of Bureau of Land Management, and all that had to be done. We got a lot of things going on right now, and I said I'd do it, and I will do it, and it'll get done next week or so. So we're not putting it off. We just finally had to say what takes priority. This meeting today took a lot of work. So
Okay. Well, I think as far as I'm concerned, we obviously in the next week or so, let's make it a priority because in 60 days, it's going to be tough to do an inspection. If he waits 60 days, that's.
might be
you know,
better. You know?
December, so
Weeds are
hopefully it doesn't
weeds are
happen.
laying down. Weeds look good. Bonnie's done an excellent job of getting the weeds sprayed in there. Pictures look good. I think, I don't see a problem. I really don't. I think we'll be all right.
Okay. And then at that point in time, then is all we have to do is file a quitclaim deed, correct?
Yeah.
Legal description of kind of how we drew the picture.
Yep. I mean, I guess, yeah, depending on the inspection, if all that comes back, then
Right.
we can get that done.
Right, because the inspection may move it one way or another.
Yeah, yep.
Questions?
Just need to make it
No.
a priority.
Okay,
Good.
There's the form. It's on the top.
okay. Get it in.
That and a lot of other stuff. So,
Okay,
okay.
thank you, guys.
Yep.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. See you later.
Have a good day.
I think, unless you guys have any questions before everybody gets out of the room, I won't move on if you have any other questions.
No, I'm
Heather
just
or-
wondering, maybe Shaq and I can work together to schedule the next follow-up date to make sure it doesn't fall off the radar again.
Yeah, we can work together on that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay. Very good then. So I see behind you, Miriam. So we'll jump back
It's
to
not
the
gonna fall off the radar again.
top. And we do apologize. It's not,
Okay,
we will continue to move forward.
thank you.
Yep.
We'll work on it after.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good
Thank-
afternoon, Miriam.
Thank you so much for having me come over. I
Can
really-
can you talk into the mic?
Yeah, I can probably do that. Is that
Is
better?
it on?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay, good.
So, thank you for having me come over. I really appreciate the time you've given me this afternoon. And apologize for being late. It's a Monday and road construction season and leaf peeping season. So, thanks for fitting me in.
You
On the Zoom, we have Heidi Agler, who is our consultant who put together our regional housing assessment and some strategies. So she's going to present on data and information to you, and I'm going to be here to hopefully answer some local questions or follow up and a little support, things like that. So,
Okay. All right. Heidi, it's yours.
Great, thank you, everyone. Let's see. I just need to become a co-host so I could share my screen if possible.
Easy, Shaq.
Easy Shack.
If you can see,
don't need that.
typically if you go to participants and you see my name, you can give me power, I think by pressing on the dots. And then more. Perfect, thank you.
Oh, be careful, little hands, what you do.
Keep your finger over that button, Shaq.
Feel the power.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for having me virtually. I'm going to go ahead and start a slideshow and walk you through the housing needs assessment that we did for the SWCCOG region and talk about some data that are pertinent to Montezuma County. So my name's Heidi Agler. I'm part of a women-owned business in Denver. We're called Root Policy Research. We've been doing this work, a business partner and I have been doing this work for, a couple of decades now. We were with a different company a few years ago, and actually quite a while ago, probably 15 years ago, I did a housing needs study when the state was funding those studies for Montezuma County and Cortez, but it's been a number of years. So it was fun to get back into that work. I'm going to provide a bit of an overview of what we did. I'll talk about demographic, employment, and commuting data, spend most of my time talking about current and future housing needs, and then give you a sense of our recommendations. It's probably easiest in a virtual format for me to go through different sections, and then I'll pause and take questions, but we can always go back and page through the slides at the end to answer questions. So this study covered a 5-county region, including Montezuma. Other counties were Archuleta, Dolores, La Plata, and San Juan. This was a study that was part of a grant that Housing Solutions for the Southwest and the SWCCOG, Miriam's organization, got together. The idea was to put together past and current efforts to identify housing needs. So many of the counties and jurisdictions within the counties had done housing needs assessment, but it was just specific to that jurisdiction or that town or that county, and hadn't really taken a look at that cross-dependency among the different jurisdictions and among the different counties. The other objective was to put together an easy-to-digest report that could be used by town planners, by housing staff, by policymakers like yourself to understand how to plan more intentionally around housing needs as well as land use. And then the other piece that we developed is a searchable and usable database. It's called a Regional Housing Needs Dashboard. It's available online. There's a link in the report that lives on Miriam's website and that I think you may have with you, an electronic copy anyway. And this allows you to compare and contrast your county with other counties. It's got just a number of pages that give you information about the key indicators that we look at when we do these kinds of studies. And it's easy for staff to update as new data come online. So I wanted to just start with giving folks an idea of when I say affordable housing and when I use terms like AMI, what I'm talking about. So housing programs, because they really grew out from the federal government many, many decades ago, they use something called the AMI, or Area Median Income. And that is basically the middle income household in a representative jurisdiction. So it's a little bit different than an average, but it's not subject to big swings in high highs or low lows in the data. It's a good measure of the representative household. And that area median income is then scaled by household size and by jurisdiction and put in these four different buckets for housing purposes. Extremely low income, you can think of these folks as people living below the poverty level. The income limit for an extremely low income household of 2 is $17,650. That means that those households would have to find a rent of $441 and less, including utilities. And so households at that income level, some of whom are people living on fixed incomes, so like Social Security or disability income, some who are working service jobs, lower wage jobs, they really need help in order to afford housing. So we see those folks living in government subsidized housing, sometimes mobile homes. Nonprofit housing providers reach that level too, but private sector typically does not. Then you go up the income spectrum to very low income, that's 50% of the AMI. These folks typically live in publicly subsidized housing. Sometimes they get tenant-based rental assistance, which is commonly referred to as Section 8. In some cases, they can attain home ownership through shared equity programs like what Habitat for Humanity offers or land trusts. And then as we move up the income chain, you see people more commonly living in privately provided housing or home ownership, and we hit the moderate income. But as I'll talk about that in a moment, that's changing pretty rapidly in the region. So in terms of demographics, one of the things that I spent a lot of time looking at was the change in permanent resident households, the change in housing units, the change in households who have workers versus like a retiree-only household, and what that meant in terms of housing supply. And the story is really different depending on the county that you look at within the region. So in Montezuma County, your story was pretty well similar to La Plata County, but more so than any other county, you had a pretty good balance between permanent residents and housing units. The one differentiating factor in Montezuma County, we also looked at whether or not housing units converted to seasonal or vacation use, or were taken, offline because they were being occupied by owners who moved into the county to become permanent residents. So we looked at all those dynamics to try and figure out how supply changed over the last 10 years. you not only grew pretty well in terms of accommodating workforce demand, but in your county, we identified a change from those units that were not being rented to permanent residents and workers to units that were being rented to permanent residents and workers. So unlike some of the other counties in the region, you didn't get a loss of rental units being taken out of the housing stock for seasonal or vacation use. And that's a good thing because then you can accommodate your employment growth. The other thing that we take a look at is changes in demographics to try and understand how did those changes in supply influence your demographics. And the biggest change you see here is a big drop in the proportion of your households that are families with children. So this graphic here compares 2010, which is the gray dot, to 2019, which is the blue dot, and looks at where those dots are far apart. That means that there's been a change. You'll see a big drop in families with children and a slight offset in the proportion of your residents who are seniors. The other thing that we look at are shifts in income. And we look at these paired with shifts in commuting, which I'll talk about in just a moment. Shifts in income tell us a little bit about what's going on with households. In your case, your shifts were relatively modest compared to some of the other counties that had a bigger impact on the $100,000 and more. But when we segment that by renter and ownership, which is what you see in the second graphic here, you see a big drop. So more than 500 of your renters earning less than $35,000, they either left the county to move somewhere more affordable or they're making more. So that bump in renters earning between 35 and 75, that tells me new renters moved in, they combined households, so their household income is higher, or they left the county because they couldn't find affordable housing. You also saw a decline in those, low to moderate income owners as well, and that could be the same dynamic, offset by a boost in the 100,000 or more. We looked at in and out commuting for every single county in the region to try and figure out how those relationships were working and how they may have changed since 2010. Short story, in Montezuma County, 529 more workers commute out of the county for work than 2010. And we believe that has a lot to do with some of the more rapid increases in housing prices in nearby counties. So compared to other counties, even though you've seen housing prices go up, you still remain much more affordable. So people who have been displaced in other counties, and those could be those individuals earning between, the 35 and 75,000, they are potentially living in Montezuma County and working in nearby counties like La Plata. But kind of compared to some of your other kind of counterparts, you didn't see a big influence in jobs or a big change in jobs filled by in-commuters. Your big change is actually right here, the proportion of jobs within Montezuma County that are filled by out-commuters. Just a reminder, and this is all employment data, and typically looked at a regional level. So we relied pretty heavily on your local regional economic development organization to understand what job projections look like, both short-term and long-term, and then to get a sense of how things look right now. So just a reminder of your largest industries. Those are government, which is typically a moderate wage industry, retail, lower wage industry, healthcare and social services, moderate, some lower wages, accommodations and food services, low wage, and then construction, moderate. But all together, if I combine these 5 industries and put them all together, these industry clusters, and put them together, that's 3/4 of your jobs are in those low to moderate wage industries, and that's for the region overall. So that gives us a sense of what kind of housing is needed to accommodate employment growth. I'm going to go ahead and move on to current and future housing needs. We did a little bit of a look at the distribution of housing types relative to the distribution of households to understand where might there be some opportunity to make better use of land to accommodate households. We know overall, as a nation, certainly as a state and as a region, that our household composition's changing quite a bit. So you'll see here, like, for large households, which are that's that 6% at the very end of the left sidebar, make up a very small proportion of households overall in the region. Most of your households are small households, so people living alone, or moderate households that could be a couple with children but are not 5+, which is the definition of a large household. And then everybody else fills a big part of the housing stock, and that would include second homeowners, vacation owners, and households without children. But when I match that distribution to your distribution of units, you'll see you're real heavy on single-family homes, which may accommodate some of those household types, but certainly is probably too big to accommodate the majority of them, your small households and to some extent, your moderate households. So this gives us a sense that there could be some opportunity to broaden household types, to sort of refilter where people are living, help them achieve more affordability, and then thinking forward how the region grows, it's probably a good idea to take a look at that distribution and how to make better use of land. I'm going to go back and talk about household costs and how those, housing costs and how those have changed over the last 10 years. And this first graphic here looks at changes in rental prices. So the gray are the number of units that are priced at the top, like, for example, less than $350 per month. The blue is how that's changed as of 2019. You certainly see a big shift in the county. So you had, nearly 1,000 units that were really affordable, that were accommodating those low-wage workers. In 2010, that's down to less than 500, where the offset has occurred. So as all those units have moved up in price point, we see them now clustered between 500 and 1,500 a month. You still have very few units renting for $15 or $1,500 or more a month. Some of your surrounding counties look a bit different, and they've seen a bigger jump up to those really expensive rental units. What's important, though, is to compare that to how renters' incomes have increased. And the really good news in Montezuma County is that the median rent, even though it increased a lot by 37%, the median renter income rose by 55%. So that means that most renters could accommodate those increases. What we don't know, though, is how many renters left the county because they experienced rent increases they couldn't afford and then were replaced by those higher income households who could manage your rents. And we believe it's a little bit of both. So the good news is that you're not extreme in terms of when we look at renter income and rental costs. But the bad news is that renters did get displaced, as we know from those income graphs that I showed you. Comparatively, when we look at changes in the prices of homes for sale, and we have more recent data here on this because we were able to get data donated from real estate agents, we see here that you've still got a pretty good share of units priced less than $250,000 a month. Your median for sale home price is $225,000, so that's very good in terms of affordability. You've seen some increase in those higher cost buckets there. You now have 7% of your units at $525,000 and more, and I anticipate that should go up. You are one of the most remaining affordable areas in the entire region, which is going to put more price pressure on your for sale housing stock. So again, what I had mentioned early on is that one reason that you were able to retain your affordability is this conversion of unoccupied second home seasonal vacant units into units that are occupied by permanent residents. We saw a boost there, which was able to help you stabilize your employment growth and absorb some of that growth for the region overall. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our housing needs projections, then I'll go into recommendations, and then I'll answer questions. So we did, we built a model that did some projections, both short-term and long-term for the region overall, as well as the individual counties. That model looks at new jobs that are going to be filled by outside workers, which is a pretty easy thing to do right now because our unemployment rate is so low in Colorado. We looked at non-worker households who don't own, moving into the region or the county. We accounted for seasonal and vacation ownership demand. We also said it would be really great if those people who are paying more than 30% of their incomes in housing costs, those are called cost-burdened households, if we were able to alleviate some of that burden so they can spend more money locally. And then we looked at how many units needed to be created to enable 10% of renters to buy. So putting all that together, we calculate the number of units that we would recommend you focus on for workforce over the next, and this is really a 3 to 5 year period. We looked at 3-year projections, but recognizing it takes a while to develop units. So we believe you could benefit from 220 new units, with a lot of those being in that affordable ownership bucket. If you could convert some of your existing renters into owners, we think that would make a big difference in terms of stabilizing that rental stock. Now, this all comes with a caveat, and that is to the extent that the region continues to really grow and that other jurisdictions, surrounding jurisdictions aren't able to maintain the housing prices needed for workforce, that demand will increase in Montezuma County. This is really where we shift from needs assessment to a policy call, which is, you can continue to make a choice to continue to grow and accommodate that regional workforce while also building your economic development locally, which we saw kept pace with the region overall. So in terms of recommendations, we were tasked with coming up with regional recommendations, and I'll talk through those next. We think it's very appropriate for the regional officials and policymakers to come together and start talking about planning for housing regionally. And that would involve setting regional housing goals, developing an action plan for achieving those goals, and being really respectful of the individual county's needs. So your needs are very different than La Plata's needs, certainly different than Archuleta's needs, and very different than San Juan County's needs. And so thinking about how do we work as a region to sustain our economic development and our growth, and making sure that the distribution of workforce housing is fair and that it works out for the identity that we'd like to maintain within our counties. This would require, some leadership, obviously, and meeting regularly. You've already got a lot of that structure in place. Some of that is just formalizing it and adding to staff capacity. I think that you could all, this isn't just a Montezuma County editorial comment here, but I think the region overall, if you all thought a little more intentionally about land and making better use of land, embracing some alternative housing types and products, that would go a long way toward meeting workforce housing demand. Publicly owned land varies depending on the county, but there's some of it in some areas, and so requiring some affordability if that land were to be developed. This has become a very popular program as in the state as housing prices have become out of sight in many, many areas. And there is a state program that, so some grant funds available to study that. So this is a sort of officially land banking, looking at acquiring land that would make sense for workforce communities or mixed income communities, or requiring some share of affordable housing through an annexation process. I mentioned the state grants. So there's a couple of, there was a bill that was passed in March or April of this year that provided state grants not only to study opportunities to plan better for accommodating housing needs, but also to transform land that exists, that's underutilized, that's publicly owned, that could be made of better use into affordable housing communities. Money. So, developing a regional housing trust fund is something that I would recommend you all study and look at doing in the near future. There's a lot of money right now because coming off of the pandemic, a lot of money that the federal government gave to the state and gave to localities to be able to stabilize communities, but that's not going to last forever. And so looking at a regional trust fund that could help fill those gaps between state and federal funds, or do what we call gap financing. So when like a mixed income or affordable housing development needs a little extra subsidy to be able to reach those lower levels of affordability, being able to provide local funds to do that. There are simply fewer strings attached when you're working with local funds. And I just want to, talk a little bit about where this kind of work has been very successful. Summit County made a commitment many, many years ago to being able to keep families in the county, and they've done that through repurposing land that the county and the town of Breckenridge owned into workforce developments, as well as they invest a lot in childcare and helping families afford childcare. And these are some examples that you can click on at your leisure that give you a sense of what those developments look like. Summit County is the one county that I'm most familiar with in the state that's not only had a long-term investment in workforce housing, but also has studied it and has definitely shown that there's some long-term results. So they've seen that families have been able to stay in the county, they've stabilized their workforce, and when people aren't spending a lot of money on housing, they invest in the community. So there's an economic boost there as well. And last but not least, I would say this is the real head scratcher, is how do we preserve those long-term rentals? So I said a couple of times that this problem is not as severe yet for you, but what we've seen in many, many other places in Colorado, both in urban, some suburban, but mostly rural resort areas, is a conversion of housing stock that was being rented to workers, being converted to vacation rentals or second homes. And it's taken a pretty big dip out of that permanent resident rental stock in some communities. Gunnison County's been looking at an incentive program for landlords to help them keep those long-term rentals in the long-term rental pool and not convert them. The person who's looking into that program has some experience doing that in another county in this state. And I know that the state's got an interest in this as well, as maybe coming up with a program. So this is something to keep an eye on. It's worked well in the past as long as it's structured appropriately. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'll stop the share and I'll go ahead and take questions.
Commissioner?
Well, I don't have anything right now.
No. Actually, I have a question, Heidi, just doing the math real quick. So when you talk about rent or payments, where you had the low income or the extreme low income, right, a couple of slides after in the beginning, so are you using just that 30% figure? Is that what you're using for housing? Or is it 30 to 35% of their income? Because you had a 17,000, I think 6 something in that 441, which is I don't even know anybody, and haven't for a long time, that you can find rent anywhere, not even in Montezuma County, for $441. But is that still the number, the 30 to 35%?
Yeah, so what we do is for this study, we took a 30% cost burden number and used that to calculate that affordable rent. In some communities, it's being increasingly common to think about that as 35%. The industry, though, typically cuts off cost burden at 30% of a gross household income. So that doesn't account for like childcare or medications or transportation costs.
Correct. It's just for rent or your house payment, that 30%. Okay.
Yeah, and utilities technically. For a homeowner, that would include property taxes. If you don't have 20% down and so you're paying private mortgage insurance, that would count, as well as homeowner's insurance.
Okay. So then you said in Montezuma County that we could utilize another 220 new units right now. That's today?
That's actually looking over the next 3 to 5 years. So both looking at where your need is right now, satisfying some of that need, but also making sure that you're keeping up with your county's employment growth projections.
Okay. And then the last thing that I had, which we just had a conversation about this morning in a meeting, is land banking. You know, land banking is a great thing if you have a lot of money laying around, but unfortunately, nobody has a lot of money laying around to do any land banking. So what's your recommendations as far as land banking? Where do you get the funding for the land banking?
Yeah, you know, so the way that I would look at land banking is keeping that door open when resources or land become available. It's just a door I wouldn't shut because it can be very effective when that opportunity presents itself. There was a bill that was passed at the state legislature a couple of years ago, and it's still, I would say, being implemented, that required state agencies who have underutilized land to make that available, as in not available to develop, but let people know about it. And so as you're, as you get into a position where you could apply for state grants, where money may become available, let's say, Tesla wants to come in and build something huge in the county, just thinking about how to use land a little more in a little more of a sophisticated way through negotiations, through donations, to be able to take advantage of opportunities to build mixed income and workforce housing as they arise.
Okay, that's all I have. I think that's all we have right now. Heidi.
Commissioners, would you like to know sort of the follow-up steps the COG is taking to help bring in some funding to address some of these?
Sure.
The Southwest COG Board in September approved the COG to work with San Juan County because we need a fiscal agent. So House Bill 21-1271 provided funding for affordable housing planning and affordable housing incentives. And that incentives is how to reduce fees, get utilities places. I think land banking falls in there. I need to do I want to double check, but a way to purchase some land that may be adjacent to existing land you already own, or adjacent to utilities that you already own. But the planning section is currently open right now, and the idea is that we can then utilize existing land that we own as local governments, and we can make a more coordinated process across multiple counties and jurisdictions for ideally to go to an RFP to bring in a builder who can then build this for us. What we're seeing, and Archuleta County has been having this issue, especially the town of Pagosa Springs, is that they may have land and they may have a little bit of money to put towards affordable housing, but they can't bring in a builder because they're all so busy, because 10 units is not as much money for them as 50 units or 100 units. So we're struggling to build that in the region and other jurisdictions because of that quantity and just the demand right now. So the thought was, if we can aggregate our needs together, then we might be able to bring in a builder to build that all for us together, fitting within design standards and requirements and all of those things with each jurisdiction, because this isn't a usurping of anybody's planning process or needs. But just how do we make it a little bit easier on that builder to go through that RFP process instead of having to go through 10 different planning commission meetings and then 10 different boards and county commission meetings and things like that? How do we do it more streamlined? And that's what we are applying for funding to do, to be able to then be more appealing to a builder or builders to come in and make sure that we actually can build our housing for us. And then once we do that, we can go to that incentives grant program where we can then make sure that there's water and sewer and roads, and we also can waive planning fees costs with that, but yet the county doesn't necessarily lose that money because we can use that incentives funding to waive those fees. So everybody is made whole. So it helps with that reduction of cost, and that makes housing sometimes unaffordable, like getting utilities someplace. On top of that, we also applied for funding to create a school-to-trades pipeline in the construction trades, because we do not have enough construction workers as a whole in the region to do some of this work. And so we're going to need people to do this, so we need to get some folks that are already in those trade certifications, and then we need to make sure we have an ongoing pipeline of individuals who are interested in HVAC and, you know, carpentry and electrician and plumber and all those things that we need. And so we've got this sort of two-pronged approach to do that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. And how long will that take, Miriam?
We're hoping that when we receive funding for the planning component, less than a year, ideally, so we can apply for that affordable funding, because it's a need now, and it's not it was a need yesterday, but it's really a need now, so I want to do it as quickly as possible. And if we are awarded the workforce development grant, then that is a 2-year process. But the certifications would start almost immediately, as it's already lined up.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Good. Well, it can't get here quick enough.
I know. We're working on it. We're trying.
Any other questions? Okay. Anything
Great.
else?
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Heidi.
Thank you.
Okay, Alan Higgins, I do not see.
I don't know where he got hung up, so we'll just.
Okay. Well, then we will go. I guess we can go right straight to Mel or Bonnie. Sorry. I would.
Hey, Joel, still got that picture from over at the senior center? Just take one. From Daphne? That's what she was gonna do.
You mean that 3 out of 5?
Yeah.
It says on the app, though.
Jack, are you passing those out?
I am. I'm pulling mine out.
I guess I could have done it.
You
With
could've,
coffee,
but
I mean, you could have handed it
Yeah.
all out
Could've got
at
something
one
with
time.
coffee.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Hey, I got a question for you.
Okay.
Look at this picture and tell me what it is. Now, what did I do?
That's a picture of your last Zoom meeting, Joel. It's appropriate.
Oh, that's
No, it's
dirty.
not.
Looks like evening primrose, but text me this picture because I have a really cool app.
That's off that really cool app.
What is it? Did
Yeah.
Eddie give it to you?
It's a wild daffodil.
Oh.
I got that app.
Oh, look at you. That app is
You
pretty
don't
awesome,
get
isn't
me
it?
now.
Now nobody needs me because they just have apps.
The only trouble with it is you gotta have your phone service to use it.
But
so
you
then I
can take pictures and then save your pictures and then upload them on the app, which is awesome. Okay, so I guess first page, I just kind of wanted to show you what my operating expenses are if you're curious as to what goes in that account. It's mainly supplies, office supplies, personal protective equipment, Agterra, which is our mapping systems. And then clothing reimbursements, licenses, shop supplies, mailings, that kind of thing. And then on the bottom, I just kind of showed you the revenue that we've gotten so far. Okay, so I guess we'll just start with salaries. So the Russian olive guys, they're paid through the grants. Currently, they're making $16 an hour. I don't know how I still have them. It's not an easy job taking down Russian olives all day. And so what we did was we took the average road and landfill crew operator salary, and that average came to $21.40 because my crew is pretty much operating, you know, the excavator all day. So I feel like that wage is appropriate for what they do. So what I did for those guys is I started their base pay at.
And I'd like to clarify, when we did the wage study, all other counties just had spray techs, and the free out-of-fight crew is clearly not just out there spraying, and that's why we deviated from the wage comparison from other counties on that.
So we talked about starting them at their base pay at $21, the adjustment percentage for 3 years. So their pay next year comes in at $21.40, and that's going to be reimbursed through grants. So that's not coming out of the county money. As far as our office manager, the average office pay came out to be $17.50. So I started her at that base pay. Next year will be 2 years, so her pay would be $17.63. Don Wilson's pay was a little over comparing to the average county's spray techs. So what I did was I just gave him a little raise from 1938 to 1952. And then as far as me, the base pay was $24.27. I get paid $24 right now, so that would bump it up to $25.54 because I've worked 7 years. Any questions on those? Okay, so we'll just dive into the actual budget. As far as the revenues, they're going to come from all the grants. And the total for the revenues is estimated at $135,000, and I feel like that's reserved because last year we brought in $220,000. But I think 135 is a reasonable start. And then 1120 permanent salaries, it went up from, and I'm comparing it to 2020, it went up from 86,000 to 94,000. Part-time salaries, we included, I think, 2 3-month part-time salaries for at $15 an hour, and that's going to come out of the free out-of-fight grant revenue.
I mean, is that even realistic? I mean, McDonald's is paying $15 an hour right now. I'm just.
I hear you.
I just.
Well, I feel like if
it's
they're
realistic, we're talking 2 guys for 3 months.
Yeah.
Who are you going to even attract?
It's generally students.
Like
is who I think that'll
high school kids?
do this job. And that's who we hired this year is students, it's high school kids.
A student.
So hopefully next year we'll get 2 students. I don't think any I don't think anyone would work a 3-month job for under $20 an hour. I don't know. So I'm just looking at students. Okay, cost share program, $35,000, and that's with a $10,000 revenue grant. Operating expenses will be about the same as this year. Education, I think it's been $6,000 was the budget, so we're gonna keep it that size. I think I got some grant money last year to help pay for it last year, or it came out of some other fund. Fuel, $4,000. Telephone, $3,000, same as last year. Everything's pretty much the same. We did bump up dues, meetings, and travel because I want to send the free out-of-fight crew to a CAT training. It's specific to the equipment that we're renting, and I think it's 2 days in Albuquerque. So I wanted to send them there to get certified or just get some training. Chemicals, $65,000. The Mancos River project will be grants, and that's a couple other different projects, but they'll all be reimbursed by grants. Russian Olive expenses will be reimbursed, $20,000. So ultimately, I'm expecting $135,000 in revenue, and $285,711 would be county budget money. Does that make sense?
does.
I'm gonna make the suggestion, you've been lucky to spend under $4,000 in fuel that you've budgeted each year. I don't know that you're gonna be that lucky again next year.
So
Almost
bump it up
everybody
to
has-
5,000 or 4,500?
45 might be safe. Everybody else has pretty much bumped their fuel up.
Fuel's almost doubled, so.
Is your excavator running every day?
Yes.
7
Well,
days a
6
week?
days.
6 days a week? Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's almost like insurance. I still don't think that we're gonna be 34 or 36%. I mean, I can't imagine that. That's a huge amount of money, and we have it in there right now, but I can't imagine it being that. I hope not, because that's.
Well, I mean, this is current through,
I look at all the increases, and that is the scariest increase on everything when you start looking at that.
well, I mean, your Russian olive crew is going through December, right?
Correct.
And you're almost at 3,800 of your $4,000 now.
Yeah, the fuel that the Russian olive uses, I put it under the Russian olive expenses.
Okay.
So the fuel under our,
So that's just unleaded fuel for your truck?
and diesel for our spray trucks. But 1226 doesn't have anything to do with the Freatifite crew. They have their separate billing for fuel.
And your spray truck is done the end of this month?
You never know. Don, he ends
Don.
October 31st, but I
Correct.
might keep going.
The
Till it
weather dependent,
freezes.
of course. Okay.
Have we compared our operators to the Davis-Bacon? I mean, instead of just looking at
Instead of other counties?
other counties, I mean, where do we actually compare with private industry on that?
Oh, look. I don't have that answer in front of me.
Well, and that's also different between spray techs too. When I was private spray tech, I was making $26 an hour. So their average of 16 or 17 through the counties is way lower than private. But I mean, private doesn't get benefits either. Any questions? Sorry, I just kind of jotted off numbers, but if you want to review it,
No, not right now. We will review it.
word.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll go to Mel.
Thank you, sir.
That's a lot more detailed budget than the Cassell shows, but you just might want to see that. First page is where we get all of our income for the landfill, and the second page. And then we start with the expenses. I don't see a whole lot changing as far as income. We're busy, so it's kind of based on the last 2.5 years, averaged out. Permanent salaries, based on what the county is wanting to do, is going to go up approximately a gross of $20,000 for 9 employees. And the breakdown of that is in Cassell. I made a note in Cassell of what the pay increases will be.
For everybody?
For everybody.
For the 9 people?
There's 2 of them, Shaq. That's for the full-time crew showing, and then I have one for our part-time scale lady.
Go back to the first one, Shaq. I didn't. Please. Okay.
Did you want to look at the part-time again?
No.
Okay.
There was the only one that I got that.
Okay.
Is there any questions on that, or why we?
Nope.
Couple things coming up. Obviously, this month we're going to have a massive bill or scales being installed this month. So that was, of course, in last year's budget. And coming up, if you're looking at the proposal I give you, that is a one-time payment for the compactor. And that's something I need to know when we can order that. It's a 90 to 100-day delivery, at least from Pico for BOMAG. And if you decide to go for CAT, I don't know. I haven't talked to them anymore.
I thought you said the CAT was not really.
The CAT
Up
is,
to-
if we compare the options on the CAT, it's more expensive. They came up with a warranty very similar to the BOMAG, but it will cost a little bit more. But we've had issues with the BOMAG. They're down there working on it again. We have so many codes, we can't even get the hours off of it right now. And we just spent $37,000 fixing that machine.
So, would you be willing to try the CAT? Will
I'm
we have
willing to try the
local-
CAT, but bear in mind, it's gonna be a fair amount more expensive. And I do have the bids here if you want to compare them again.
I think I remember when you gave them to us last time, to go ahead and read them
So
up again.
the BOMAG basic machine, exactly what we have now is $541,853, 90 to 120 days out with a $5,000 estimated delivery charge. The CAT machine is $516,000 with the basic CAT wheels, which they're just not.
They're not heavy enough.
They're not heavy enough. They don't compact as good. And if you add the CAT diamond wheel option, it raises at $42,000. And based on what all the other landfills have told us, the Karen wheel is the way to go. But that raises it another $110,000 for the machine.
So now you're at 600 and.
You're at
40.
$626,000. About $80,000 more.
One good breakdown.
Now, the warranty we've had on BOMAG, they have covered everything. They've replaced the engine, they've replaced the main hydraulic pump, stuff like that, but we do have a lot of issues with it. It does an excellent job compacting. Everybody in the industry agrees with it. Mesa County just bought the largest BOMAG there is. $1.1 million they paid for that machine. Power Equipment has offered us excellent service. The drawback to the BOMAG is parts. The freight getting them here. They're from Germany. It took us, I don't know, 9 or 10 weeks to get that final drive in. We were still able to operate the machine, but still.
And I would almost be willing to try CAT, who's a little bit easier to deal with, and we have local.
Wagner has offered us excellent service on all of our machines there. They usually show up, of course, Pico has too, within a day or two. And of course, CAT's an American-made machine.
American assembled.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Well, you obviously have enough money in your budget to buy either one of them. If you have any reserves, you can buy either one of them.
We do. We have plenty of money in the reserve right now to buy either one of them. I have that right here, but I'm not going to announce it.
So really, I guess it's up to you, Mel. I'm willing to go either way. If you feel that you are going to be better taken care of with CAT that's local, or waiting for.
Well, the only issues we've had with, we had a lot of issues with machine breaking down. According to Pico, they don't have the issues that we have had with the newer ones. This was the first machine of this size and style in the United States was ours. They've got a lot more of them out now. I don't know.
Plus you got one sitting there for parts.
Yeah, we got one sitting there for parts.
It really wouldn't be parts. I mean, that's going to be your backup machine,
It's our backup
right?
machine,
It's going to be
correct.
still probably utilized when you go down for service or go down for whatever.
Right.
When you take it out for a week, the other ones are still going to be there.
Correct. That's the whole purpose behind this. Because our downtime, when we were down the Cat and the BOMAG there for almost 2 months, we had no way to pack trash. And we had a pile, Shaq was there, we had it piled up waiting for something so we could pack it. We can't do that. We can't wait for, or we can't pack trash with a bulldozer. It just doesn't work. It doesn't compact. We're losing what our purpose there is to sell airspace. If we're not getting the compaction, then we're losing money. And it's going to shorten the life of the landfill. And that's just the bottom line.
Which is even more money.
It's even more money.
Because then we have to build another cell.
Correct. And as busy as we are, I thought we'd probably be 10 years where we'll be able to build the next cell. But cell 3, thank you, is already up to the height of cells 1 and 2. Cell 4 has 5 feet of fluff layer in it. We're busy. I mean, people just, it's unreal. People moving in, people moving out, everybody's cleaning. We're going from $700 a day to $2,000 a day in just private citizens. The last 2 years have been that way. I don't see it slowing down anytime soon.
Well, I mean, I don't have an issue with the BOMAG either. I mean, there's obviously a lot of difference if you think it's going to perform.
I mean,
We have one that we've used, well, we've actually had 2, right?
2 BOMAGs? No, just one.
Just the one?
This is the first compactor the landfill's had, before we were bailing trash, which
Okay.
we never want to go back to do,
Ever.
ever.
Especially with people hauling in roll-offs from groundhog.
What do you think?
The crew would like to try a cat, to be honest with you. I don't get to operate the machines a whole lot anymore, so I'm kind of relying on my crew as to what they would like. Wagner has done an absolute fantastic job taking care of us on anything we've ever asked them to do. The parts were going to be a little bit cheaper. But you have a BOMAG, if it's the same machine, if something catastrophic breaks down, we may get a part off of our old one to fix it, or vice versa. There's something to be said by having 2 machines that are the same. You're looking at a Cat, you're going to spend another $80,000.
Yep.
And I do know Cat has had some issues. Jim Clare in San Luis Valley has an 816 Cat, and it was down for over 2 months, and that's why he wound up buying a backup machine.
So you want to buy a used BOMAG?
No, he actually found an old Cat down there in New Mexico, which he was extremely lucky to find, because I've been hunting for a year.
As a general rule of thumb, nobody buys a used landfill compactor because once a landfill's done with them, they're done. Now, if you can find a used dirt compactor and you can use it, that's okay for a backup. But buying one that's been in a landfill,
I think that's one thing people don't really understand.
That's hard on them.
Landfills are extremely hard on equipment. Kim Gash, that works for the road department, come down there and worked with us building the cell and stuff. And he even made the comment that he had no idea how much dirt, because we have to blow our filters out every single day. And that's something they haven't had to do at the road department. They didn't realize how detrimental the landfill environment is to equipment. And like Shaq said, those trash compactors, they're up there in the acid from all the vegetables, the fruits. It's hard on equipment, flat out hard on equipment. I don't know what lead time Wagner is. I haven't talked to him. Because based on our last conversation, we were kind of leaning towards the BOMAG. So I called them at $5,000 delivery, 90 to 120 days out. Now I can get some information from Wagner and find out where they stand on their machine. There are a lot of landfills all over the nation that use CAT machines. There is.
You know, Mel, you were saying earlier that you don't see anything slowing down anytime soon, but I actually think a few well-placed artifacts next time CDPHE is here could really slow you down.
Well,
Keep up the good work.
somebody else can come down and run that thing.
I mean, there is a lot to say to have everything standardized. I mean,
Right.
we go from BOMAG to CAT. They're not compatible.
No, not at all. Nothing about them's compatible.
You know, in all seriousness, if you could get BOMAG to design the machine and CAT to build it, you'd have a good machine.
Amen to that.
You just can't do that.
One thing
So-
BOMAG does on their machines, and if you come down there, I can explain it to you. CAT's pivot in the middle. They articulate just like a loader. BOMAG's also articulates, but it also pivots. So the machine twists also at the same time it's articulating.
CAT will be a rougher ride.
And that makes better compaction.
And
got
you
more
save
weight
a
on the
lot of
ground.
man hours because the BOMAG has wire cutters in the teeth
True.
to chew up mattresses and stuff that the
True.
CAT won't. And it's got about twice as many teeth, and the teeth are offset.
I wouldn't be opposed to trying the CAT, but it really sounds like the BOMAG is probably the better buy. And it's really more designed for what we're doing.
I think she's wanting to get out of here.
For,
No, you guys are just keep talking about it and you keep going back to,
it's BOMAG.
yep.
She's saying you
Yeah.
just,
That's kind of the same discussion we had last time, and that's why I called Pico and found out about the
Okay.
delivery and freight.
all right.
So, like I said, this budget shows the one-time payment of a machine for next year. It also shows a $35,000 payment through the road department for a new pickup for the landfill for the crew, a crew cab truck. We can get by another year, but the one we've got, Jack well knows it's pretty much on its last leg. We started with a screwdriver, and it's time for something.
Can't you find one down there?
Huh?
Can't you find one down there?
A screwdriver or a
No,
pickup?
Pickup. First you need.
Well, that's where we get most of our tools, isn't it, Jack?
Yeah.
Out of the landfill. So those are the two main purchases for next year. Other than that, it's basic.
No, you
Business
wouldn't put a
as
lease
usual.
vehicle out there.
Get some somewhere.
One plug I do want to put as far as our pay increase for the crew, what we're bringing in on mattresses covers that. Just mattresses alone.
What did we go to, $10 a mattress?
$10 a mattress. Bondad's still 20-something dollars a piece. So this year for mattresses,
A lot of mattresses being hauled.
we've already brought in $15,000 for mattresses.
Okay.
That's a lot of mattresses.
That's a lot of mattresses.
We're not, the motels aren't changing out, are they?
No, we haven't seen any of them yet. It's every couple of years.
Yeah.
The
think it's
city
all
has
the-
brought in a bunch of them
It's all the working from home.
last week for their city cleanup. But
Throw it in the back of your pickup and drive fast. You don't have to take it to land.
Maybe we can blame it on COVID quarantine or something.
Okay, thanks, Mel.
is there anything else?
Nope.
Better shut up before I get in trouble.
So you want me
we're
to
good.
get in touch with,
I'd call BOMAG, find out, and just go from there. I mean, I think really, then you have two machines that are compatible,
okay.
and
It makes the most sense. I don't know that that's what I want to do, but it doesn't make the most business sense to do it that way. And the crew's already familiar with it.
who was the guy that bought the last BOMAG? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Actually, it was the commissioners.
On whose recommendation?
I believe it was Larry Downs.
Oh. Okay,
Keeps getting better.
thank you.
Yep. If you got any questions,
No, thank you, Mel.
okay. See y'all in the morning.
Thanks, Mel.
Same
Later.
channel, same time, same place.
Send that channel.
Okay, Justin. Gosh, we're gonna save the best for last.
Let's bring them all up at the same time.
Afternoon, gentlemen.
Morning.
Okay. We'll just jump into the revenue to start at the top. I got it at 60,000 for next year, and the reason I went with that number is just because these last 2 years I don't know whether to really kind of trust that or not, just because these last 2 years everybody else has kind of been shut down. We've been the only ones open, so I don't know kind of what we're going to look like next year. So I just figured if we kind of went back to the 2 previous years of 2018, 2019, we'd be a little bit close. But I do expect that to be greater. Moving into permanent salaries, I think Shaq's got the notes up there. If you go off of our comparisons, this is kind of where we should be at. I know 2 of ours are relatively low compared to any of the comparisons out there. Just to kind of give you an idea, I kind of call our crew a master jack of all trades. We do a little bit of everything. You know, we have operating, maintenance, got to have a basic knowledge of electricity, plumbing. We have to keep an image of the county, deal with the public, things like that. So we kind of do a little bit of everything. With the salary, just so you know, half of it's being paid out of general fund, the other half comes from a conservation trust fund. And just to kind of jump into that real quick, I know Commissioner Candelaria probably understands that a little bit since he's been here a few years, but just in case you guys don't, the conservation trust fund is monies that are allocated from DOLA grants based off of a per capita, or they give us so much per population. Most of that is lottery fund, a biggest percentage of that funds that. Then that we can use in public recreation for maintenance and or capital improvements. That's what that fund can be used for. So, you guys got any questions as far as that or salary goes? Okay. So moving on, our fringe benefits, I believe we went off of 34% for that one, but like you guys know, we don't know yet. Moving into our operating costs, that's where most of our stuff comes from or comes out of, is operating. That can be anywhere from buying water heaters to shop supplies to office supplies, pretty much anything, panels. I did bump that 3,000 this year just from last year, just because the increase in costs on everything. I think we'll still be okay at the 48,000. I don't think we need to go any higher than that. Telephone, we're at 1455. That's for 3 telephones. Public utilities, we're sitting at 50,000. And we generally don't use that much, but it's a safe buffer just because we do not know exactly what we're going to be having out there. So we have no idea what our power demand is going to be every year or what our utility demand. More events we hold, the more we're going to use. The less events we hold, the less we're going to use. So we kind of use 50 as a standard. We do got all the LED lights and stuff like that out there now, so I do think that number is going to continually be a little lower than normal as far as.
So what are our big events that we would have big power draws for the rest of the year?
For the rest of this year, none. We're pretty much done. Our last one was high school rodeo. That would have had a big power draw. But I mean, just in case we do bring in other big events. Right now we hold about 5 or 6 huge ones. If we start getting to 7 or 8, we might see a little bit more power usage. That's just kind of how that, or if we get more, I mean, right now we have had a lot more events this year than we have.
But that's typically from May till September, right? Well, we don't really have any events.
March to
October,
September.
November, December.
No.
Ag Expo,
I guess
March,
that'd be
gun show.
Yeah.
Those are the bigger ones.
Yeah, March is the kickoff of our events. I mean,
Yeah.
for big stuff. The winter time, you know, if we can bring something in, I'll try to do it. But right now it's just kind of hard because nobody wants to do anything in the winter time.
Yeah. No,
You
I'm
know.
just saying that's a big buffer. You're not even at $30,000. That's
This year, no. Last year we used 37,000.
Yep.
The prior year was 44. Now I think that drop from like 44 to 37's been kind of our, you know, upgrading the LEDs and things like that. So I think that kind of helped us a little bit. But yeah, like I say, I don't anticipate us,
okay.
you know, using that. We just kind of have it as a buffer. Fleet costs. Right now we got that sitting at 6,000. That's what it was last year. I use that for pretty much anything fleet. This year I'm actually holding on to that because we do have a tractor rental that's going to be right at $5,000. So I am saving the rest of that just for that yearly tractor rental at the end of this year that I'm going to have to pay. Other than that, that's pretty much the bulk of our budget. Any questions?
All right, now.
Do we need to get that survey done for, to see if we can change that, three-phase to general three-phase and get it off of, what's the
Yes.
other term, demand? Because we had to wait for 18 months, right,
Right.
before we could change that. Have you followed up on that at all, Justin?
I have not.
Because that's a huge cost to us also for, that demand charge.
Yeah, it was
from-
three-phase general versus three-phase something else.
Yeah, what is that? Anyway, there's a pretty,
Yeah.
it's a significant difference. So we might, shoot me an email and I'll look back. a couple
Okay.
days ago to find out who did that. I think,
Yeah, because I don't know. That's what I was trying to think. I know we discussed it in the past about changing over.
it's like a
but-
couple $1,000s. a
Okay.
month. It's significant.
But I don't know who we were communicating with at Empire either.
You can call Andy Carter out there. He'll get you where you need to go.
Okay.
And Chris, his last name slips me right.
Get with me Friday. Empire's closed Friday, but I don't have any time until Friday.
And I'll
Have to
look
go
at my
down.
emails also to find out who we were talking to.
Okay.
Well, we were going through Mike at Shaw Solar.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Through who?
Mike Ellis?
Ellis.
Oh, with Shaw, you said?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had to wait 18 months before we could,
Because he kind of knew all the hoops that needed to be
That we
jumped
had
through
to
to
do,
get that
yeah.
done.
so follow up on that too, because if we can get that changed, that's a significant drop in what we're paying for utilities, I think.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay, you all come together or?
I cannot display more than one at a time. Well, not with
Okay.
that attitude. I could figure it out, but
Yeah,
it'd be too
say
small
not
for
with
you
that
to see.
attitude. All right, come on up. Who was up first, Leslie?
Sure.
All right, come on.
She is
My name
now.
on there first. What is that, Assessor? Just follow instructions, that's all I do.
Leslie, Ellen, and Kim.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Started looking around for my dad. Sir.
But our payroll thing's kinda together. So we had to have a little meeting the three of us and Shaq. When we looked at the comparison worksheets that we were given to kind of go off of for our new salaries, Ellen's was really high, Kim's was medium, and mine was really low.
But not really high in where my employees sat.
No, but just
Where
what
other
we were gonna
counties
bump
were.
them up
General
to.
made a little more, and we don't want to do that in our building. We like to keep it kind of all the same.
They don't want to
So-
fight over
Yeah,
employees.
so you don't have one going from you to you to you, or vice versa.
No applications come to Kim or I, and I'll go to Ellen, because we can't, and then we can't fill our spots, but Ellen's got all the people.
We actually kind of put that into effect when we first started, that
Mhm.
we would all start everybody the same, and then kind of go from there. But when we got the salary adjustments back,
It was gonna mess everything
they
up.
looked a little different, and so, sorry.
So these will all be consistent, the same as what you have and what Ellen has?
And we kind of, between the three of us, kind of came up with a plan going forward too, depending on how this all works out, like a 1 to 2 year, and then 3 to, kind of going as a step raise sort of a situation now for our building, because we do need to kind of keep that in mind with, because we do have the same kind of workforce
Yeah.
in our building. So that being said, this is just my, off of the, I think we did the medium, middle, and then years on the job.
No, we used the low.
We did use low?
We used
Okay,
low.
low and then years on job to come up with the new pay scale for the assessor's office. I do have a couple of weird things in here. I don't have, the admin the admin 1 position. I don't have that currently. It's open. So the new starting wage on that will be probably $18 an hour. I don't have an appraiser, and I'm looking for a deputy. So I'm going to have some stuff kind of shift around in there. The $6,000 for appraiser is when my second appraiser gets his license. That's his licensing edition that's been promised for 2 years. COVID kind of put a damper on getting any classes done. The state only does mass appraisal 1 time a year, and that's the last class he has to get into, so we're hoping to get him into it this next year.
So you have appraiser 8 and appraiser 2, is that a level of an appraiser?
Those are years on the job.
Oh, years,
Mhm.
okay. Okay. All right.
So that's, that's all the years on the job. What were you saying? Well, he's not supposed to be. He's supposed to be showing my worksheet. That's not right anyways, because I couldn't erase that note.
Oh, that attitude.
I had that issue too.
I don't want to read the note.
Well, I put my
I
note
had
in,
the note up there.
but I gave you,
means-
yeah. And the fringe benefits, just, what we were told to add on to there. My operating expenses is $10,000, and that includes everything we buy for the office. I don't think from water rentals to paper, pencils, everything we buy. My professional services is $85,000. 29,000 of it goes to Total Assessment Solutions. That's the Kinder Morgan. They value all the personal property for this oil and gas, Kinder Morgan. Value West is the commercial appraiser. And then I always just have to keep a little bit in there in case Kinder Morgan creeps up again. So I have attorney fees and travel fees and all that stuff to go to Denver, which we'll be doing again. Postage this year is no money. We only do postage every other year for reval. So it's a $10,000 every other year. This year's $0. My maintenance contracts are Xerox and Apex software. The Apex software is the software the appraisers use to draw all the houses. Miscellaneous, I just like to keep a $5,000 miscellaneous in there. I still have about 3 map cases that need replaced, and that's about the price of a map case. So when they come on sale, I kind of try and get one every so often. So that's just in there as a buffer for when I can get them. Or I just had to buy 2 new printers, just things that happen. Dues, travel, and training is at $12,000, and that's for my assessor dues and then my 2 conferences, and then to train the appraisers to keep them up on their ongoing education. Once they're licensed, they have continuing ed every year that they have to take. And fleet costs, just my fuel and vehicle maintenance for the automobiles. So my total budget comes to $542,115 for 2022.
Is there a protest period on that?
Nope. Protest period was in May.
Slightly off topic, your contacts at
Imagine that.
Yeah, right.
your contacts at Kinder Morgan, have they given you any reason we should ever be hopeful in the future?
Possibly see some increases going on, but not to the
Degree we
degree
had
that we
before.
had before. Is all the word I've gotten.
Okay.
Maybe it's leveled off though.
He said he doesn't see it decreasing much, if any, but not up where it was. Unless something crazy changes.
Okay,
New world every day.
no question.
I asked mine, they just laughed at me.
Okay. Pass the mic.
Ready for me?
Alan.
I wasn't sophisticated enough to say anything. Here's the breakdown of the detail. First one's the treasurer's pay.
Thank you, ma'am.
You know, you have this whole sheet of paper. You can utilize it.
Whatever, I shrunk it.
So it would all
You can
fit
use the bottom or
lengthwise.
the back, or
I'm really not very good
Next
at these
time you
kind of
bring us
things.
something over, it needs to be cut out and
See,
pasted.
she puts hers on.
yeah.
I
Pair
did kind of
scissors
shrink
and
it
some
up
Scotch tape, you know.
tiny. So on the treasure one, again, we were discussing the salaries, and we all went off of the minimums that we set for the building, and then we added years of service. And so that's how I came up with those salaries. However, different from last year, I had included a full-time person last year, and this year I just put it as part-time. So I'm hoping, well, not hoping, if foreclosures get busy, there's going to be a real possibility I'll need another part-time person to help with processing, which I threw that in there as a 20-hour-a-week person. No benefits. And the fringe benefits are just what we were told to do. Operating, of course, my operating expenses, total of $28,000, but $18,000 to $19,000 of that is the journal. And we do collect that back. I mean, it's added on to every tax account once it's advertised, that goes on their account. So if the account is paid, we get it back, but some accounts are never paid. So that's kind of where that is. And it has been going up 7% every year, 7 to 10, but 7 on the
And that's
larger
not
one.
discretionary, that's statutory.
Yeah, I can't change that. That we have to do.
I almost
Fight
made
that
it.
again this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I know why they're doing it, but. So other than that, I have office supplies. That's just my basic printer supplies and, regular things, checks, the 1099 thing. Oh, my Tyler lease, I stick this all under operating. So I have that online lease so people can look up their taxes online and pay them online. That's what that is.
And capital purchases, I know I'm gonna need a couple printers, so I'm putting that there in case they die, because when they do, you need it really fast. And then postage, that is for, they actually print and mail all of our tax bills. So we actually don't get that back. You know, I mean, I guess we do in a roundabout way, but not directly. May not go quite that high, but I don't know what postage costs are gonna do, and so there we are with that. Travel, I had a little more than last year because I didn't actually go anywhere this year because we tried to cut back and not do that, but I did add a little back in for that. So my total budget is 302,104.30. Any questions? Okay, and then if you move to the second page, public trustee, that one's pretty straightforward. There's the salary, the fringe benefits, and then our biggest expense is the ImageNet copier lease that I have. And some office supplies there. That's pretty basic. And then travel, that's just dues and a little bit of travel. It would all really be included in the same one. So 20,000 there. I'm so simple, aren't
Okay.
I? Don't I look better than, well, you know, at least I don't have all that stuff. Just real basic.
You don't have a lot of grants and anything else
No.
to take care of.
We're pretty straightforward
Pretty
there,
easy.
so.
Pretty easy. Okay, very good. Kim, you are next. You're usually up here with us.
Yeah. So basically, you guys kind of already know about the salaries. When you see the notes on my notes there for permanent salaries, I went in and fixed it once, and then we had our meeting, so then I went in and fixed it again, and then I realized I'd still done it wrong, so, and you can't erase your previous notes, so it kind of self-explanatory, but it's the bottom part that you need to read. Fringe benefits, I went as proposed by administration. Our tech fund, it's updated to about our current balance right now. We are still making deposits into that, so it's going to go up just a little bit as well. As you guys know, the tech fund, $40,000 of that is marked for the rest of the payment for that, the ERTB grant that we got last year. So
Is that the digitization grant?
yeah, that word.
And yeah. And then you have a machine being installed right now, don't you?
We do. The Agilis Duo was delivered this morning. Our training is tomorrow. So I haven't got the billing for that yet.
That's okay. They don't have anything for you to do tomorrow.
Okay. Operating expenses, I put in an extra $1,000 because everything's just going up. So, and I'm not sure what we're going to be doing next year as far as elections, but we'll get into that here in a second. Postage is up $2,000. The average cost to mail out our motor vehicle renewal postcards is about $1,300 a month, and those come from the state. Maintenance contracts, that's just our copier contract. I'm expecting a small increase in that. Dues, training, and travel. Some certification classes are required as in-person training. That also includes my CCCA dues. So I will be trying to get at least my election girls up for their recertification of in-person classes. The ERTB expense is in there. It still has a balance of $396,376, plus that $40,000 is what we will owe them. Hopefully, we're going to have that done this year, but I do expect some of it to be carried over to next year. They said that they would have it done, but I don't know if it's going to get done this year or not.
And that's money in, money out. That's paid by the state. You
Right.
can put whatever number you want there,
Right.
and it's just going to pass through.
As far as my election expenses, so as you know, with my elections, one year it's way up, and then the next year it kind of goes down, and then the next year it goes way back up. So this year, just to let you know, of the elections in 2020, We had a municipal election that was totally reimbursed. We had a presidential primary that was totally reimbursed by the state. And then we had the general election, and we only got a partial reimbursement for that one from the state. And that's, I think it's 80 cents per voter is what they give us. In 2021, we had the recall. It was for the Cortez School District. That was totally reimbursed. In 2021, we had a Cortez special election that was totally reimbursed, and then we'll have the general election, or the coordinated election in November. And again, we'll get the 80 cents per voter because they actually have 3 state questions on the ballot, but the rest of it will be on the county.
And so the commissioners know when you're looking at expense reports every month, and there's something like, just for example, that recall that wasn't planned, that'll show that line going into the red because there's not really a way to show a receivable in the expense items of these reports. So it does come back in, but it just goes into the general fund, and so.
So that's why you see my budget, for example, last year, I had all those reimbursements, but it was, I think I was like $40,000 over. That's because my reimbursements don't come in, show back up into my, so they just go back into the general fund. We were trying for a while to get that to where it showed a true just for me, and that didn't work. So we're going back to the old way where I just put it all in as expense, and then it's just reimbursed into the general fund. Does that make sense? Okay. In 2022, I'm sure we're going to have a municipal election. We are going to have a June primary, and we will have the general election. And unexpected elections are always possible, recalls, recounts, or even I've been asked about a special district election, but that happens right at the same time as the municipal election. So, and I've already promised a municipal, so I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do them both. Because of our equipment, we can't run 2 elections at the same time. So, so I've raised that budget for operations and elections to go into for $60,000 because of the additional elections. The other thing I wanted to mention was last year, part of the expenses last year were for the recall, so we got it all ready to go, but we didn't actually have it until February of this year. So some of those expenses were carried or paid last year and then reimbursed for this year, if that makes sense. Professional services, in 2020 it was close to $20,000, but included expenses for the recall that was not conducted. This year I proposed $15,000. Postage for elections, I've increased it to $20,000 for the 3 elections because it's averaging about $5,000 each to mail the ballots out. Maintenance contracts are the same, and that's for the Dominion, the extra Dominion equipment that we put in for the Tribal Vote Service Polling Center. Computer software is the additional $10,000 for the Agilus Duo. And then, of course, next year we'll have the Dominion payment paid out of capital outlay. And it should be our final payment at $48,266. Some things that I wanted to talk to you guys about was election room space. We've done some remodeling in there, and so it's a little bit bigger, but if we go back to a spot where we're going to be required to have 6-foot distancing between our election judges, for a big election like the presidential, we're not going to have enough room. We're going to have to move our election room somewhere else for those people to be able to process them. So it's not something
That's
that
2024.
yeah. I just want to keep it in mind that that might happen again. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about is we seriously need something, either some window tinting, we need some blinds, we need something for those windows in front of the motor vehicle clerks, because at this point, it's just the windows, and they're standing there like we're in a fishbowl, and they're tapping the windows, and they're knocking on the windows, and and we, Shaq and I've talked about blinds, or we've talked about window tinting, or something to that effect that we can put.
They got those one-way blinds where you can see out, but you can't see in.
That's what I'm hoping for, is for us to be able to see. Right. We're still keeping our line on the outside, which is working much better for the flow. Yeah, yeah. Come in.
Serving number.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we,
I would just say for capital stuff, Shaq, just.
I mean, blinds aren't even a nominal capital expenditure. We can just buy blinds.
yeah, I wouldn't,
think depends on if you want something special.
If
I
it goes
would,
one-way blind, you're gonna have to go through
That would spend some
a
money.
reputable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I'm thinking. I don't think you want just a regular blind. I think you'd want something that's a little bit better than that, a little bit more permanent.
I was actually thinking we go down to the secondhand store and get some sheets and tack them up.
Yeah, well,
we might do that for Halloween. You never know about us.
There you go.
Montezuma County one.
if you do that for Halloween, that's fine, however. Kind of figure out what you guys really want and then
Yeah.
let us know because.
Decorate for Halloween and
Well-
take them down, decorate for
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, decorate for Christmas.
Last year when we talked about the budget, we were talking about bulletproof.
Except
But-
for your doors open, so they just walk in. And,
Right.
Well, shut up, Shaq.
So,
We're on YouTube.
so one of the things that they talked about was doing some bulletproofing behind the motor vehicle desks,
Uh-huh.
so that if those girls had to,
Duck.
so. One other thing that I'd like to talk to you guys about is some shelving in our election room. We have, at one area, there was a little kitchen unit that had a sink and stuff. We tore all that stuff out, and we could use that as a shelving, but it would have to be a locked fireproof cabinet. So that would be, the ones that I've looked at are like $4,000, $5,000 a piece. So I just wanted to let you know that that was something that I might look at and see if we can afford. So,
Sounds like an unfunded mandate to me.
and that's all I really had as far as the budget.
If you wanna look at some blinds, go out to the sale barn and look at the ones they put up in the kitchen and the front room there, because they're the one-way blinds. You can really see good out of, if you wanna look at some out there.
Okay, but they can't see in?
They can't see in, but you can see out really well. And then you can raise them and lower them if you need to.
That would probably be the easiest thing.
Are you gonna ever raise them though? I mean, once you change it, are you ever gonna do it?
Probably
You're
not.
going back.
Probably not ever raise them. So it's very uncomfortable for the girls to be working with one customer and having somebody tap on the window or yeah. We actually tried the draw a number one time, but people stole the numbers. They took them home with them. So, take a number and then we'd call you. That didn't work. So, but anyways, that's all I have. Unless you guys have questions.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ladies.
Yeah. All right, we have one more who is actually not on the agenda, but we can conduct other business as it comes before us. And with that, Mr. Dietrich, if you would like to come on down and show us what you have in store.
How are you, James?
I'm good. How are you gentlemen today?
Good.
Good. Okay, gentlemen, mainly just kind of wanted to go over budget submission that I've got for this year. So I'm going to start with the last few items: operating expense, telephone, miscellaneous, and dues, travel, and training. Generally, I'm just proposing to keep everything exactly the same as we had last year. I am proposing to shuffle some of the dollars that were in the dues, travel, and training up to operating expense, although the amounts are all the exact same in that. Usually do a couple of trainings every year and usually attend at least one conference, usually the oil and gas conference. This year we'll probably also work in a conference on the floodplain management. They've updated all the rules for the floodplain management. That'll take effect in January, and they'll have some training associated with that. So I'll probably go ahead and take some of that, assuming everything is in person. We don't know at this point. Could still be Zoom, hybrid meetings, things like that. Generally, my whole budget is, I don't know if it's the smallest in the county, but it's got to be down there near the smallest. It runs about $6,000 for annual operating expense. The two big numbers are really with the permanent salary and the fringe benefits. The permanent salary has gone up this year to kind of reflect what the state average is on that. That's about a 6.5% increase. The fringe benefits, this is the increase that I'm being told would be in place. That's a little bit of a large increase there. I don't know why the fringe has gone up so much this year, but anyway, it's a lot of that's probably outside of our control here.
And we won't know the final number on that for a while yet.
Sure, understood.
We're just in the budgeting process. We're trying to make sure we have it covered.
Right.
But it is large.
Yeah.
That's a huge increase.
Yeah, that's a big increase for that.
That's huge.
So I've worked hard at keeping everything else the same. So.
That's good.
So anyway, mine's a pretty simple budget. You know, currently an office of one, so it's pretty basic and straightforward. So I guess that's it for the budget presentation at this point, unless there's any questions.
No,
Okay.
I like it. This is easy.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, appreciate you listening.
Thanks for
All right.
being able to come in.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, you know, it's been busy the last couple 2 or 3 weeks here. I haven't been able to visit with y'all, but I'll catch you up on some of that tomorrow. I did want to let the commissioners know that we've got a letter that I put together. I think everybody's seen it. It has been sent around, but it has to do with the Fox Den salvage proposal coming through the Forest Service. This is an area where they've gone in, they've done some treatment, they've done a timber cut, and it seems like a lot of their leaf trees were caught up in one of those wind throw events. And so they're going to go back through and try to salvage whatever good leaf trees were downed in that event. This doesn't seem real significant to me. It's about 167 acres. For all the leaf trees that they left, it just doesn't seem like it's a significant amount. Yet whatever we can salvage and pull out of that forest that's good commercial, harvestable material, I figure we ought to just probably support that as we can. So that's about it. I got one other request that came in today, and I'll try to have the letter for you tomorrow on that. Forest Service is asking for support for a motorized grant proposal. They put one in every year. This year it'll be focused up on the Box Canyon area, which is up around Chicken Creek, Hay Camp in that area. And so every year they tap into the GOCO motorized grant, in which they use to go out and do trail maintenance. Sometimes they'll put new trail in. A lot of times it's just education and signage. But anyway, I'll get all that figured out and have a letter ready for you tomorrow. We don't have to sign it tomorrow, but we'll have the letter so we can have a review of it. So.
Okay.
Other than that, I think that's all I've got for today. And then we'll fill the commissioners in on everything else tomorrow.
Thanks.
Very good.
Okay.
Thanks, James.
Thank you,
You
James.
bet.
Commissioner, do you have anything else?
You
Okay. Well, then we will adjourn this meeting.